Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first RareX Science and Research Roundup. I'm Karmen Trzupek. I'm the Senior Director of Scientific Programs here at RareX, and I am very excited to be here communicating some of our updates around what's happening within RareX as they relate to science and research endeavors. Recently, I co-hosted a science and research meeting with Vanessa Vogel-Farley, who I suspect many of you know for her incredible knowledge of data standards and all things governance. And the two of us every month are going to be doing that meeting to provide an opportunity to meet with patient advocacy leadership, to provide updates about the RareX platform, and to give sneak peeks about what's coming with regard to science and research and take questions live. But I know that many people couldn't make that meeting. It's very difficult to pull together a time that works for everybody. So instead of notes, I'm going to be doing these quick roundups following each of those meetings for everybody who couldn't attend. I'm going to try to keep it to 10 minutes, but this is new, so we'll see how that goes. All right. I just said it's going to be monthly, but there actually will not be a meeting in September due to the Rare Exchange. RareX is extremely excited to be hosting our first Rare Exchange Patient Innovator Forum in 2 weeks. So it's coming up really quickly. And by the way, how great is that? A Patient Innovator Forum. I love that. This event is going to be so exciting. It's going to be such a great opportunity to meet each other and to brainstorm ways together that we can really create progress as a community in rare disease. So I'm hoping to meet many of you there. So we'll pick back up with these meetings in October, and we'll send out an announcement in advance. I hope many of you can make that call. But if you can't, you'll get the roundup from me. Okay, other support for patient advocacy leadership. The PAG dashboard is now available for all patient advocacy leaders within the DCP once you've undergone city training. The city training, you should have gotten a link to that. If you haven't, that is provided by RareX. That's a benefit to all of you in our effort to kind of bring you into the fold of citizen science. So once that's done, you can access that data. The data there is super useful for engaging patients in your community, for membership outreach, for social media outreach, for communication with researchers. So we hope you find that information really helpful. All groups should already have access to the RareX shared drives. If you do not have access or you're having any issues accessing your shared drive, please contact either Tom or Vanessa, and we'll make sure that their emails are linked. And speaking of communicating with researchers, this fall, RareX is launching the Researcher Analysis Platform. So this is incredibly exciting. And honestly, this is why we're here. We collect data from patients, from families, from your communities, because we together want to advance therapeutic research. And we can't do that unless we share that data. So we've been working very hard to get all of that data in a way that it can be migrated over to the Terra workspace within the Broad Institute, and their researchers will have access to that. All of that migration and that process should be in place by September 30th. And at that time, researchers will have 3 different ways that they could potentially access that information and all of that data. So there are 3 levels of permission. The first one, level 1, is really available to anybody who goes on to Terra and creates an account. And that just gives snapshots. Essentially, it's like the researcher version of the PAG dashboard. Level 2 enables researchers to use data for research, for statistical analysis, for preclinical explorations, for publications, to investigate some of their own hypotheses, to generate new hypotheses, That is the bulk of what we expect researchers to do with this data is within that level 2. All of those requests will come through our data access committee. So a researcher will submit their purpose, what they intend to do with it. They have to show that the work is IRB approved, and then that will go through our internal process for approval. Level 3 is for clinical trials and other types of studies where they would be actively recruiting participants. That's a totally different use case that goes through a different level of permission. And with that, we would be communicating really closely with your organizations. Okay, on to the Q&A. We've gotten lots of questions through our feedback channel, and we will make sure, by the way, within the notes at the bottom, we'll make sure to link in how to submit questions and feedback. So we've organized some of those questions and feedback. We can't get to them all, but some of the big overarching ones I wanted to make sure that I cover. So here's one. What happens when a patient turns 18? And can you enter data for a child who is already over the age of 18? So these are kind of two different questions. Right now, RareX is going through a process of creating an automated process where accounts will be migrated over to the patient when he or she turns 18, or the age of majority in their state or country, because that can vary. For patients with cognitive impairment, parents will remain the owner of that DCB account. But of course, there are some patients who are not cognitively impaired, but who might still want their parent to continue to enter data for them after the age of 18. And there are lots of reasons for that. We know that there are mental and emotional disorders that affect attention, things like ADD, things like autism spectrum. There are also simply issues struggling to cope with a diagnosis or with the weight of disease management, where this is kind of just one more thing that's a little too much in their lives. So we've heard all that feedback. That's all really, really useful. And we are submitting an amendment to our IRB to request proxy data entry and data management for some of these scenarios. IRB review can take a few months, so we will certainly be updating you when we hear back. Okay, next question. What if a patient is never diagnosed but has the symptoms? Is there a way of getting that more clarified? Yes. So we know that in rare diseases, the diagnostic journey can be long. And along that journey, we still think it's critical to collect data. So we have built in ways that we collect symptoms and that we can collect a diagnosis that is presumed or assumed, but not yet clinically confirmed. We have some of that captured now and built in now, but we are improving the way that data is captured, and you're going to see that pretty soon. Next question, biosamples. Why do we ask about this? People want to know, are we going to start collecting biosamples? Is that why we ask? We do not have plans to start collecting biosamples broadly for all patients who are coming on board the RareX platform. However, RareX is in discussion about partnerships with a variety of groups, and we are creating models for sponsored projects in collaboration with industry funders in particular diseases. Currently, we have a natural history study ongoing, and you're going to hear more about that in the near future. But that's one where biosamples are being collected as part of that natural history study. So we're asking that information for future use, but we think there are going to be a lot of these studies in the future. Okay, next question. Can researchers leverage this system at some point for uploading their own findings and or linking their evaluations to affected individuals who are enrolled? Yes. So we are piloting that right now. I think that we can kind of split this into clinicians versus, meaning a healthcare provider who is providing care to a patient, versus a research study. We're piloting both and working through that. We have partnerships and initiatives that include collaborations with other registries, with companies that integrate and pull in vital EMR data, electronic medical record data. So there's going to be a lot more to come about this, but we recognize the importance of that data and we want to capture it. So continue to attend our future science and research meetings, because there are going to be some exciting announcements coming this fall about some of those collaborations. Okay, last question for today. Is it possible to know who uses our data and when we can opt in and opt out of particular studies? I think you all recognize very, very well that RareX is absolutely committed to patient-owned data. Every patient can consent to the use of their data by broad types of research, but we do not ask participants to opt in or out of certain individual studies within that level 2 environment that I talked about. We want to make data widely available to advance therapeutic research. Remember that data is de-identified and that consent is dynamic, meaning that you can change it at any time. But we really intend for all of those research studies to be deeply reviewed by our committee, by our data access committee, to ensure that it is a very good use of your data. For anything that's level 3, where a researcher wants to recruit individuals into a study, that's of course totally different and always something that you would have to actively opt into. Okay, I think that's it. And I think I did a reasonable job of keeping that pretty quick. I hope to see many of you in a couple of weeks in San Diego. And for those who can't be there, I hope to see you in our next science and research call in October. Take care.